In the summer, when the pine forests of Montana were bathed in the golden light of sunset, a man named Lars came to the mountain wilderness to escape the hustle and bustle of the city. He was a nature photographer who loved solitude, wild trails, and the smell of resin that lingered in the forest air. Lars planned to spend a week in the forests of Bitterroot, with a tent, backpack, camera, and provisions. On the third day, in the morning hours, he walked along the rocky ledge where a cougar had once been seen. It was his dream to capture the graceful predator in the wild. He was quietly creeping along the trail when suddenly he heard a short, stifled growl that sounded like a whine. He walked closer to the edge of the gorge and noticed a young cougar wedged between rocks on a steep slope. Her hind legs seemed to be dislocated, and her body was wedged between two slabs of rock. The beast's eyes flickered between fear and pain, but when she saw Lars, she froze, ready to defend herself if he approached. He realized that any movement could be perceived as a threat, but he couldn't leave the animal to die either. Carefully, he pulled out his hiking blanket, pulled on his long-sleeved jacket, and almost crawling began his descent toward the beast. He spoke in a calm, confident tone, making no sudden movement. When he reached the cougar, it growled and tried to jerk away, but immediately cried out in pain. Lars carefully crawled under a rock, leaning on a rope hooked to a pine tree at the top of the slope. He propped up the rocks with his hands, then used a metal flask to push one of them away. After several agonizing minutes, Puma broke free of the trap but did not run away. She looked at the man with a long, studying stare, then slowly disappeared among the trees, limp but alive. Lars remained seated where he was. He was scratched, tired, but satisfied. He had saved a predator whose fate could have been decided in just a few hours. He didn't even take a single photo. It didn't matter at that moment. 2 days passed. Lars continued his journey, but now he was more attentive. He felt that somewhere in the shadows of the pines he was being followed, but he didn't know whether it was just his imagination. Someone was really following his footsteps. On the 6th day, in the evening, he camped at the foot of the mountain, where an icy stream was murmuring. He pitched his tent near the spruce trees, built a small fire, and began to prepare a modest supper. Darkness thickened, and the forest was filled with the sounds of the night. Suddenly, muffled growling came from behind. Lars turned around. A coyote was standing in front of him, with his ears pinned back and a hungry look in his eyes. Behind him, 2 more. A pack. They were clearly naked, and the smell of food had attracted them. He backed away slowly, holding a burning branch in his hand. The coyotes were not afraid. They began to narrow the circle. He shouted, waved the stick, to no avail. One of them lunged forward and clawed at Lars's leg. The pain pierced him, and he fell to one knee, but he managed to scare the animal away with a kick. And then, out of the woods came a shadow. A puma, the same one. It swept past Lars like a ghost and slammed with all its might into the nearest coyote. The others ran away, howling in terror. The forest was quiet again. Only the fire crackling and the heavy breathing of the rescued and rescuer could be heard. Lars sat on the ground, stunned. Puma stood nearby, her eyes glowing in the fire. She didn't move, just watched. And then she slowly approached and lightly rubbed her forehead against his shoulder. For one brief moment, as if in recognition, Lars, not believing himself, ran his hand along her neck, feeling the warm fur and the powerful muscles beneath. It was unimaginable. Then the cougar took a few steps back, turned and disappeared into the darkness. In the morning he woke up as if after a dream. Everything seemed unreal, but the scratch on his leg and the claw marks by the fire proved otherwise. He packed his things and headed back to town. In a small cafe at the foot of the mountains, Lars told his story. People listened in disbelief, but one gray-haired forester said, "If the beast sees you as a trustworthy person, the forest has blessed you. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing." Lars went home, but often returned to these parts. He was no longer looking for pictures. He was looking for the sight that had once met him at the cliff. He believed that Puma was still alive, and would sometimes come out of the shadows to see if there was a kind-hearted man nearby. This story is not just about saving a wild animal. It is about a connection that emerges where there seems to be nothing in common. It's about trust, which cannot be bought or chosen. It can only be earned. Lars came to the forest to take photos, but found something much more: deep silence, the truth of nature, and the look of a puma that changed him forever. He never again treated wildlife as an object of photography. Now for him, every crunch of a branch, every whisper of wind between the trees is a reminder of the night he was saved by a predator. Because sometimes to become truly alive, you need to lose control and gain the trust of a wild heart. If this story touched you, support the channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing the video with those who appreciate real emotions. There are many more incredible stories about nature, people, and unusual encounters ahead. See you in the next video.